The Israelites had disobeyed God and were being oppressed by the Midianites for 7 years. The Midianites would invade and destroy the crops and livestock of the Israelites every year at harvest time, leaving them impoverished. During this period, the Israelites would hide in mountain clefts, caves, and strongholds to escape the oppressive raids of the Midianites. Their situation had become desperate as they cried out to God for help and deliverance from the harsh Midianite oppression. In those oppressive times, God chose an unlikely hero named Gideon to deliver Israel from the Midianites. Gideon was from the tribe of Manasseh, and he came from a poor family that was part of the weakest clan in that tribe. One day, Gideon was covertly threshing wheat in a winepress, trying to hide the grain from the marauding Midianites. As he worked, suddenly a mysterious figure appeared before him. The stranger called out to Gideon, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior!" Gideon looked around in confusion and fear. Mighty warrior? He was just a poor farmer trying to salvage some wheat for his family's survival. When Gideon questioned this bold proclamation, the stranger revealed himself as the angel of the Lord. Though seated in the winepress out of sight, he could not escape the penetrating gaze of this divine messenger. The angel assured Gideon that the Lord had seen the oppression of his people and had chosen Gideon to deliver them. "Go in the strength you have and save Israel," he commanded. Still doubtful, Gideon tried to make excuses about his lowly family and position. But the angel simply replied, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites together." Gideon questioned the angel's proclamation that he would save Israel, expressing doubt that he could accomplish such a feat since his clan was the weakest in Manasseh, and he was the least in his father's house. "But Lord," Gideon replied, "how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." Despite the angel calling him a mighty warrior, Gideon felt completely inadequate for the task. He came from the tribe of Manasseh, but even within that tribe, his family clan was regarded as the weakest and least significant. And Gideon saw himself as the lowliest member of that undistinguished clan. How could someone of such humble origins possibly lead a military campaign against the vast and powerful Midianite armies that were oppressing Israel? Gideon struggled to see how this could be God's plan. He did not see himself as a mighty man of valor fit to deliver his nation. Gideon's response reveals his humility and self-perception as ill-equipped for the role the angel had described. Yet God often chooses the weak and unlikely to display his power and bring glory to himself. Gideon's hesitation simply highlighted the divine enablement he would need to accomplish his calling. After Gideon expressed his doubts about being able to save Israel due to his weakness, the Lord reassured him that he would not have to rely on his own strength. The Lord said to him, "Surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat the Midianites as one man." Though Gideon saw himself as ill-equipped and the least likely candidate, God promised that his presence would go with Gideon. With divine backing, Gideon's perceived inadequacies did not matter. God did not rebuke Gideon's honest struggle, but simply stated that his power would overshadow Gideon's weakness. The Lord would be with him, enabling him to defeat the vast Midianite armies that were oppressing Israel. The language "as one man" highlighted how God would empower Gideon so that he and his small militia would overwhelm the enemy forces. God specializes in giving victory against immense odds when his people rely on him. This reassurance echoed God's message through the angel, that in his current humble state, Gideon would indeed become the mighty warrior to deliver Israel, not by his own might or resources, but through the Lord's strength accompanying him. God calmed Gideon's fears by promising his ever-present help. With the Almighty fighting on his side, even one weak man could accomplish the miraculous against an immense army. Yes, even after the Lord reassured Gideon that he would be with him, Gideon still felt uncertain and asked for a confirming sign from God. Gideon said to God, "If you will save Israel by my hand as you have promised, look, I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece and all the ground is dry, then I will know that you will save Israel by my hand as you said." And that is what happened. When Gideon rose early the next day and squeezed the fleece, he wrung enough dew from it to fill a bowl with water. But Gideon then said to God, "Do not be angry with me. Let me make just one more request. Allow me one more test with the fleece. This time, make the fleece dry and the ground covered with dew." That night God did so. The next morning the fleece was perfectly dry, but the ground around it was covered with dew. Despite the divine reassurance, Gideon still grappled with doubts about being chosen for such a monumental task. So he devised this famous fleece test to confirm God's will and capability to deliver Israel through him. When the sign occurred as Gideon requested, first the dry ground with the wet fleece, then the dry fleece with wet ground, it bolstered Gideon's faith that God truly intended to use him as the unlikely hero to defeat the Midianites. After God confirmed his call through the sign of the fleece, Gideon took action to gather men for battle against the oppressive Midianites. Then the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, summoning the Abiezrites to follow him. He sent messengers throughout Manasseh, calling them to arms, and also into Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, so that they too went up to meet them. Empowered by the Spirit of God, Gideon blew a trumpet blast, a call to arms for the Israelites. This was a daring act of faith, as Gideon was rallying his countrymen to fight against the vastly superior Midianite forces. He first summoned men from his own clan, the Abiezrites, to follow his lead. But Gideon knew he would need a much larger militia to have any chance against the enemy armies. So he sent messengers throughout the neighboring tribes of Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, calling them to join him on the battlefield. Men rallied to Gideon's trumpet sound from across the region. Though considered weak and insignificant, the Israelite men were taking up arms under Gideon's leadership to fight for their freedom from Midianite oppression. This pivotal moment was the first step in an incredible military strategy that God would use through Gideon to defeat the enemy against all odds. By faith in God's promise, the unlikely hero initiated the call that gathered the troops for a miraculous battle. After Gideon blew the trumpet and sent out messengers calling the Israelites to arms, an impressive force of 32,000 men rallied to join him initially. The response from Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali was overwhelming, as thousands heeded Gideon's summons to fight against their Midianite oppressors. From across these tribes, 32,000 men mustered the courage to join Gideon's mission. For someone who just days earlier was laboring alone, threshing wheat in a winepress, this display of unified support must have amazed and emboldened Gideon. What seemed impossible was becoming a reality as men flocked to his cause. But at this initial stage, seeing 32,000 men rally behind the call of the unlikely hero Gideon was an encouraging start and clear confirmation that God was working powerfully through him. Gideon starts with an army of 32,000 men. God tells him that this number is too large because Israel might boast that their own strength saved them. Therefore, Gideon is instructed to tell the fearful and trembling to return home, which reduces the number to 10,000. God then tells Gideon that the 10,000 men are still too many. He instructs Gideon to take the men to the water to drink. Those who lap the water with their tongues like a dog are separated from those who kneel to drink. Only 300 men lap the water with their hands to their mouths. With these 300 men, Gideon follows God's plan, using unconventional tactics such as blowing trumpets, breaking jars, and holding torches, which causes confusion and panic among the Midianites, leading to their defeat. This miraculous victory emphasizes that it was God's intervention and not the might of the army that brought success. Gideon divides his 300 men into 3 groups of 100 each. This allows them to surround the Midianite camp from different sides. Each man is given a trumpet, shofar, an empty jar or pitcher, and a torch hidden inside the jar. They approach the Midianite camp at night, a time when the enemy would be least prepared and most susceptible to panic. At Gideon's signal, the men simultaneously blow their trumpets, break the jars, making a loud crashing noise, and reveal the torches. They shout a battle cry, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." The sudden cacophony of trumpets, the crashing of jars, the sudden appearance of lights from the torches, and the shouting create an illusion of a massive and overwhelming force surrounding the Midianite camp. This causes confusion, fear, and panic among the Midianites. In their confusion and terror, the Midianites turn on each other, mistaking their comrades for enemies, leading to a chaotic and self-destructive retreat. The Israelite forces then pursue the fleeing Midianites, leading to a decisive victory. This strategy leverages surprise, psychological impact, and the element of divine intervention, demonstrating that victory comes from God's power rather than human might. The 300 men surround the camp at night, ensuring the element of surprise. At Gideon's signal, the men blow their trumpets, smash their jars, and reveal their torches. The sudden noise from the trumpets and jars, combined with the sudden appearance of lights, creates the illusion of a large attacking force. The men shout, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon," adding to the confusion and fear among the Midianites. In the darkness and chaos, the Midianites panic, mistakenly attacking each other, thinking they are being overwhelmed by a massive army. The Israelites then pursue the fleeing Midianites, resulting in a decisive victory. This strategy demonstrates how God uses unconventional means to deliver his people, emphasizing divine power over human strength. The victory over the Midianites is a testament to God's ability to deliver his people through seemingly impossible circumstances, using minimal human resources to demonstrate his supreme power and ensure that the glory is attributed to him alone. When we first meet Gideon, he is threshing wheat in a winepress to hide it from the Midianites. This action reflects his fear and the oppression Israel is under. When the angel of the Lord appears to Gideon and calls him a mighty warrior, Gideon questions why all the hardship has befallen Israel if God is with them. This shows his initial doubt and sense of abandonment. Gideon asks for multiple signs to confirm God's presence and instructions. He first asks for a sign when the angel of the Lord calls him. Later, he requests signs with the fleece, asking for dew to appear on the fleece alone and then on the ground alone. These requests highlight his initial uncertainty and need for reassurance. Gideon's first act of obedience is to destroy his father's altar to Baal and the Asherah pole beside it, building an altar to the Lord instead. Though he does this at night out of fear, it marks the beginning of his courageous actions. Gideon leads the 300 men in the unconventional attack against the Midianites with trumpets, jars, and torches. His leadership in executing this plan shows his full transformation into a courageous and confident leader. After the initial victory, Gideon leads his men in pursuing the fleeing Midianites, securing a comprehensive defeat of their enemies. This illustrates his complete embrace of his role as Israel's deliverer. Gideon's further military campaigns and his refusal to become a king, instead affirming that the Lord will rule over Israel, show his continued reliance on and faith in God. Gideon's transformation from a doubter to a courageous leader is marked by his initial fears and requests for reassurance, followed by acts of obedience, leadership in battle, and ultimately, his firm faith in God's sovereignty. This journey underscores the theme that God can use even the most doubtful and fearful individuals to accomplish great things when they trust and obey him. We often encounter situations where our own abilities and resources seem inadequate. Recognizing our limitations is the first step in understanding how God's strength is made perfect in our weakness. Acknowledging our weaknesses fosters humility, allowing us to depend on God rather than relying solely on our own strength. In the story of Gideon, God deliberately reduced his army to demonstrate that victory comes through his power, not human might. This illustrates how God empowers us to achieve what seems impossible on our own. Like Gideon, who transformed from a fearful individual into a courageous leader, God can transform our weaknesses into strengths when we trust in him. Faith involves trusting that God's plans are good and that he will work through our weaknesses to fulfill his purposes. This trust is often built through small acts of obedience that lead to greater faith. Courage is not the absence of fear, but acting in faith despite it. Gideon's story shows that stepping out in obedience, even when we feel weak or afraid, can lead to significant outcomes. When we achieve success through our weaknesses, it becomes evident that it is by God's power, and not our own, that we prevail. This ensures that the glory goes to God. Our stories of overcoming challenges through God's strength can inspire others to trust in him. It serves as a testimony to his faithfulness and power. The Apostle Paul speaks about his own weaknesses and how God's grace was sufficient for him. In 2 Corinthians 12:9-10, Paul states, "Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." Our weaknesses can have a purpose in God's greater plan, leading us to depend more deeply on him and to experience his grace in new and powerful ways. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories from the Bible. See you next time.